Sydney Sweeney, the face which launched 1,000 social media meltdowns. I think it was the face that launched the meltdowns. Anyways, regardless of what it was, we all know that a lot of people got very, very offended over the Sydney Sweeney ad. Now, maybe it had something to do with the fact that they mentioned that Sydney Sweeney has great genes, which, I don't know, 20 years ago would have been seen as a clever play on words, but now is apparently some sort of nod to Hitlerian eugenics because, Sydney Sweeney's white and her initials are SS. Or maybe people saw it as kind of a throwback to the bad old days where corporate interest elevated what has become known as Eurocentric white beauty standards. Or maybe it was seen as a rejection of the body positivity movement, where we now have a objectively beautiful and fit model trying on jeans as opposed to someone who's morbidly obese. But whatever it was, there does seem to be something of a war on beauty. And the question is, why? Because it's not just Sydney Sweeney. It's this whole concept of aesthetic beauty that seems to be under attack, and not just in the female form, but in every form. Have you noticed the state of modern art or modern architecture? In fact, throw the word modern in front of almost anything, and you can be guaranteed that you're probably going to look at something that is ugly. I mean, compare Renaissance art with someone duct taping a banana to a white canvas. Compare cathedrals constructed in the so-called Dark Ages with modern buildings constructed today. And yes, compare jeans models from the body positivity era to Sydney Sweeney. And it's hard to come to the conclusion that there isn't some sort of attack or war on beauty taking place. And it's complete with catechism statements warning us that beauty is only skin deep, or looks can be deceiving, or not all that glitters is gold. But here's the question. What is so wrong with beauty in and of itself? Because the reality is we can tell ourselves that beauty is purely in the eye of the beholder all we want. And yet, it is amazing how the vast majority of people across space and time recognize that there are certain things that are naturally beautiful and certain things that are not, which suggests that beauty is not simply in the eye of the beholder. Sure, people have individual preferences, blonde versus brunette, sunrise versus sunset, blue versus red. And yet, when we see something beautiful, we seem to intuitively know that it is, well, beautiful. And by contrast, we recognize something as ugly when it is devoid of the characteristics which lend themselves toward beauty. Now, Dietrich von Hildenbrand, in his book Aesthetics, theorized that beauty is in fact objective. Beauty is something that we experience, but it is not defined by our experience. It takes on forms of the spiritual, the moral, the visual, and the auditory. And it points to something that is true, something that is divine. And yet within the 20th century, we see this idea being challenged. We see this insistence that beauty is purely subjective. And we replace classical architecture with brutalism. We replace classical art with modern art pieces that have to constantly be explained to us and are always seeking to challenge our conceptions of beauty. It feels like modern art is graded by how unsettled it makes us feel, as opposed to how inspired it makes us feel. And this latest manifestation within the body positivity movement seems to kind of make sense if you accept that definition of beauty. Because after all, if beauty is just purely subjective, then sure, why shouldn't the soulless government building made of concrete, devoid of any artistic flourishes, be any less beautiful than a medieval cathedral with stained glass windows? Why shouldn't a modern art masterpiece showcasing artist Juanita McNeely's abortion not be as beautiful as Monet's water lilies? And why shouldn't the morbidly obese model covered in gold paint not be seen as every bit as beautiful as Sydney Sweeney? And yet, we all know there is a difference. No matter what they try to get us to believe, encourage us to believe, force us to believe, we can always tell the difference. So why do they keep insisting otherwise? Maybe it comes down to the fact that when we look at the physical beauty of a person, it seems like an unearned advantage, and that frustrates our sensibilities of a highly egalitarian society. Maybe other people associate classical art and architecture with ideas, beliefs, or even regimes that they find distasteful. But does that mean they stop being beautiful? One of the most important contributions I think Dietrich von Hildenbrand made when he discussed beauty was the recognition that beauty can be visual. It can be auditory in the painting that we view or the music that we listen to. But we can also see beauty in the spiritual, in the moral, in the noble deed. And these things are not beautiful just because of the way they make us feel. They make us feel a certain way because they're beautiful. But if we throw all of that out and we simply insist that beauty is whatever any one individual decides it can be, we end up with a view of the human form, of architecture, of landscape, of music, which has no real standard for beauty. And it seems to lead us down a road of mediocrity and envy. Or as the French philosopher Ernest Hello put it, there's nothing the mediocre man hates so much as beauty. Because I think the thing we have to understand is that if beauty leads us into a certain direction or a way of thinking about things, then ugliness can do the same. And perhaps it's time we start to question whether or not beauty is really just in the eye of the beholder, or if beauty actually points to something truer and more transcendent than we've been told.